So I was a bartender once upon a time, making drinks for a living. And Facebook is a data company, first and foremost, and then all the other stuff's peripheral. I think a lot of people start too big.
I think like a public profile really helps you validate the things you have written in resume. Whether
like if you ask someone, right, what's Game of Thrones about? And they'll be like, and they'll because it's a complicated show. There's a lot of stories going on. You have to really pay attention. You ask the one number I want this person to leave the room thinking about. What's the one message?
If you have 100 insights from the data, just pick one and create a story around that, because no one is interested in knowing all 100 things.
It's 70-20-10 rule. It's like doing the job is 70% of your learning. 20% is like being shown how to do it, or training. So that's like traditional training courses. They're quite good. And then 10% is like what you read. And
Hi Adam, welcome to the Decoding Data Analytics podcast. This podcast is all about how one can unleash data analytics strategies and mindset from the perspective of global data professionals. And today's episode is going to talk about how one can unlock value from data, whether it's an individual personality or whether it's an organization. And for our viewers, Adam has over 10 plus years of working experience in the data science domain. Currently, he's working as the Director of Hypercube Consulting. He shares a lot of his thoughts around organization, how one can unlock value on LinkedIn, and also has some amazing newsletter. So yeah, over to you, Adam. Anything to say?
Yeah, no, hi. Thanks for having me. Yeah, really excited to be on today and get to talk to all the listeners.
Before we, start with some technical questions, do you want to, share your journey of, decade of the experience?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I was a bartender once upon a time, making drinks for a living, and soon realised I was quite good, but I wasn't that good. So if I ever wanted to kind of own a bar, I'd have to go and get a proper job. I went back to university and studied physics and eventually computational physics, which led to my doctorate in computational physical modelling for high power lasers. But yeah, all good fun. So that's me and a whirlwind tour of my career history, I guess.
No, that's totally amazing. I went through the Hypercube Consulting website as well. You also mentioned few case studies for one to go through and how one can unleash value from that domain specifically. So that was totally amazing. I hope it grows in future.
Thanks very much.
Great
Fingers
heights.
crossed.
So, Adam, I was doing research and you were talking about how companies aren't getting the proper value from data and what one company can do, or as an individual, what one can do to, get most out of the data. Because data is everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's no shortage of data. You're right. There's actually probably more than we need or can do with. And I think a lot of small to medium organizations, which is where I generally live, and I'm talking basically people that aren't Fortune 500 or whatever, right? That kind of scale. So still, some of these organizations are really big. One of my customers at the moment is making an unexpected 400 million in extra revenue this year. So these aren't tiny companies, but they're still not big when you compare them to like FANG, right? Or like huge banks. So, but these companies, they have heard that like more data is better. They need to store everything. They need to get data scientists involved. But they're like cherry picking the stuff that works from very well established, very mature data organizations where data is actually the enabling facet of the whole company. So like Facebook is a data company first and foremost, and then all the other stuff's peripheral. Whereas like for an energy company, they're an energy company that do data. They're not a data company that does energy. And there aren't many physical space companies that have made that transition. So like Uber's a great example of a data company that happens to do taxis, right? And that they've been super disruptive and really influential. But if you read the books and watch the documentaries, even follow the news, you're probably aware of how like challenging that's been and the difficulties it's taken and things like that. That's not a common pattern. So these companies see what's the best practice from very mature places, skip a lot of the steps to get there in their own organizational maturity and get a bit stuck. So what can you do? Go back to the basics, I think. There's Vince Vashista is an incredible guy on LinkedIn that talks a lot about strategy. And he posted recently about how like in 6 to 9 months, you can take expert end users that aren't technical or aren't data people, and you can train them in SQL and like Power BI, right, in 6 to 9 months, and they'll get 80% of the value out of the data that they need. Like, and you don't have to train them on the domain. You don't have to train them on all the specifics of what they're doing, because they know it. That was their job before. And then, so I think first and foremost, really do look at the people you've already got. Are there people that are hungry to learn this? Because if they are, then you're in a good spot to bring them on board. I think a lot of people start too big, like try and do big, all-encompassing projects that do everything. I'm a big believer in like, what's the smallest possible project I can deliver that unlocks a bit of time and starts to help us prove out the delivery process and how we're going to do things. So that's kind of a general philosophy. I can dig into more of any of that if that's helpful.
Okay. So according to you, a small company should solve problem statement instead of looking at a bigger area. So according to you, what would be few strategies which one organization or as an individual can pick to, unlock more value?
So actually, yeah, you mentioned my newsletter. I'm currently the current like sort of, I wanted to get this out in writing, so you don't have to listen to me talk so much. But I'm writing like what I actually do when I start a company and look at the strategy. And the first thing I do is basically just ask everybody that is a data user generally about their experience, what they like, what they dislike, what they think is missing, and then start to group and segment that by different functions and different levels in the organization, and you'll start to see a disconnect. There's always like people above a certain level think everything's great and everything below a certain level hate it, and so you have to figure out, well, that's the interesting point, or one function loves a system, another function hates it. And so go team by team, piece by piece, and deep dive into, well, what is it that you mean by this, and why do you think that, what's the problem with this thing here and there, involved to assess like what's the impact this will have on the bottom line, like what's the outcome. Is it lots of time saving, and try and convert everything to like time and money, right? It's either kind of my message is almost always find the smallest things possible, deliver them really well, and build too complicated big things. Like basically chop the elephant into tiny pieces and eat it bit by bit. Yeah,
then scale it out.
Yeah, because as well, like you try to get all the investment and the engagement for a big project difficult, right? You might have like 10 stakeholders on board from different parts of the organization with different priorities, right? And that's really difficult. The more you add, the more difficult it would be. I'm going to write some more about this soon, but the more people involved in a process, the less likely they are to agree. So instead of that, could you get into the rhythm of delivering things and get them on board, win trust, and make it less scary and lower the risk, and then prove that you can do this, prove that it's going to work, then go to the execs and go, right, well, all you now need to do is add money or add people, and this will go faster. That's a nicer position to be in.
So basically what one can do is to focus on small goals, clear that, and then, scale that project up. So even what as an analyst or as a beginner should focus on, to connect data. There's so much data for a beginner to look upon, but how can they, connect and create a story out of it, or, present to their senior leadership?
Yeah, so I like to start at the end, actually. And I think because that's really hard. You've got an infinite number of data sources, right? And then you need to figure out, well, what's useful? That's really hard to do. What I would actually do is go to whoever the end user or the customer is, whether that's like a function head or a whole team or other developers or whatever, and just say, what's the one number or chart that would blow your socks off? Like if you could have it automated once a day, or I don't know, real time, whatever's important to them, what's that one figure? What are the two axes? What are the numbers? And it can be anything, it doesn't have to be real, but what's the one thing that's really going to change like the way you work and the way you make decisions? What would it do? Then it's your job to unpick that and go backwards down the chain, because that's much easier than starting at the data and trying to come up with interesting insights. To go, well, I know what the interesting insights are. And if might turn out that one magic chart's impossible, it's too difficult, but maybe there's other versions of it or another dashboard that kind of tells the same story. But you start to build up a bank like that. That has worked for me time and time again to allow people to get going. And then what you find, isn't it, all good analysts will know, is that as soon as you give someone a chart or a dashboard, they want another one and they want more stuff to add to it, because you're starting to educate and arm them with the right understanding, language and kind of mental models to get the most from what you can do for them. So yeah, I'd start at the end, basically.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. You actually get to take the accountability of the work, and the senior leadership will see that how capable you are, and they'll see some progress in your future journey as well. So that's amazing. Consulting. So how do you think a domain knowledge is very much required apart from technical skills?
Like I'll work on anything in the data space, and that's one of the attractions of the whole career for me, is that you can apply your skills technically to any domain and add some value. But I say it regularly, the best data professionals always have deep domain knowledge. So I'm focusing my Hypercube on energy sector because that was where I worked previously, and it's a sector I love and I understand and I know. So I work predominantly with energy sector customers because, like, there's people in my organization that I'm one of my customers I'm working with now that have like 25-year careers in the same company, and they just know they're so complicated what they do and what they know. And they mention tools that are like data tools that you will have never heard of if you never work in energy. So you've got them all. But early in your career, pick a domain that you absolutely love and try to stick to it, because over the years that will become more valuable than knowing all the models, I think.
Yeah, I have about like 2+ years of working experience, and all the experience relies around retail industry. That's something I didn't pick, but now I love it because I can relate to e-commerce, I can relate to Walmart, I can relate to Amazon. I can see how exactly browser funnel works, how exactly personalization works. So that's something even I feel that I can only suggest the leadership or my organization something after I have the domain knowledge. So for me, domain knowledge is like a very must apart from technical skills. Otherwise, it really doesn't make sense how you can provide value if you are not even in the shoes of the customer.
Yeah, you have to get all the like jargon and stuff. Just has to be, you just have to know it. Otherwise, you're just slower. It's like you talk to any of these energy guys that are super genius people trading all this money, and you ask them about SKUs and item hierarchies and stuff like that and logistic, and they're like, I have no idea what you mean. Sorry.
Yeah. I guess talking to, researching about domain is very, very important in order to, unlock more value from the organization and to provide feedback and to improvise, the strategy as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So talking about the next question, what's according to you one strategy or, one skill set which really helped in all your, decade of the experience? What's that one thing which worked for you?
So the reason I kind of progressed fast was my ability to communicate and talk and being open to doing it. I cannot stress how important communication is in this role, in any data role. Being able to know at what level technically you need to be speaking, be able to listen properly and really understand who you're talking to, being able to like get in the head of someone else and view things from their perspective. I think I was always quite good at that. I kind of did like acting lessons when I was really young, and I kind of I do a lot of hobbies and stuff that involve like making stuff up on the spot and like improvisation basically. But because I'm used to talking and communicating and being in groups, that has actually translated to the boardroom and to like the customer sales pitch and things like that, where I can connect quickly with people. I can explain things to them in a way they get. I can understand why they object to things when they do, because I've listened and stuff like that, team and things like that. So especially if you want to go the management route, like those kind of people skills really outweigh the technical skills, I think, after a certain point.
Yeah, that's true. Communication is like a really big step. It's not just about analyzing the data, but also presenting the pointers to non-technical people so that they can understand. because we can
Yeah.
just we can understand the data, we can read the data, but for them it's just numbers, and it doesn't make sense if we actually connect the dots and provide in front of them. So since you mentioned communication is a really big factor, for communication you really need to connect dots. Once you have communication, once you have domain knowledge, how can one connect the dots? So for example, you have a Tableau dashboard or you have a Power BI dashboard, and numbers as an analyst is in front of you. So how can one relate and connect the dots so that they can pull insights and present them in the story format to non-technical people?
I think like try and tell one story really well, as opposed to like get literally like one message, like talking like nursery rhyme level complexity, like really simple, do it really well in a way that's memorable, that gets your point across. Because if it's too simple, someone will always ask you the question on what's the next level of detail. Sorry, I don't understand this. What's the next thing? And let them invite the complexity into the conversation. So I would say, yeah, and it's back to, it's like, what's the simplest, smallest thing possible? What's the one number I want this person to leave the room thinking about? What's the one message? And try it like that. And if that doesn't work, you just go a little bit more complicated. You'll find what's right for you and your audience. That's the other thing. You have to kind of know who you're talking to. So like if I'm in a room talking to the head of sales, right, and I'm building a system for them or a data model for them or something, or a dashboard, whatever. Like they are communicators. They're usually very like talkative people, and they're very personal. So they might not be as technical. So they just want they want it simple and they want it easy. Whereas if I'm in the room with a CFO or a head of finance, they want to see like spreadsheets and tables and numbers, because that's the world they live in. So you just got to think like what communication channel works for you.
Completely true. I feel that it's a way to go about. Even I read somewhere that if you have 100 insights from the data, just pick one and create a story around that, because no one is interested in knowing all 100 things. It's important for you because you pulled out all 100 insights from the data, so you see as your accomplishment. But it won't make sense for the end user if they are trying to just look at the one value through which they can create some impact. So yeah,
think of it like if you ask someone, right, what's Game of Thrones about? And they'll be like, and they'll because it's a complicated show. There's a lot of stories going on. You have to really pay attention. You ask the same person, what's Lord of the Rings about? They go, it's about an evil ring and two hobbits thrown in a mountain. Like it's a simpler story.
Very simple.
So and essentially the higher up you get normally with stakeholders, like towards the sort of executive level, the simpler you want to keep it, and let them ask you about, well, what happened in chapter 1, what happened in chapter 2. Don't start with that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. So in one of your posts, I read that you have written that simply hiring the most capable person won't take you long in the journey. So why would you say that, and what are your thoughts behind it?
Yeah, so you find this a lot actually, like hiring managers that just want to get like the person with the highest grade that's got the best like career history and all this. And then the reason I think that is because above a certain point, right, I think that can be damaging, because in almost any kind of technical team isn't your ability to contribute as an individual, it's your ability to contribute as a team. So you do need to make sure that person matches the culture of where you work, like the other people in the team, the manager they're going to land with, the kinds of projects they do, so on and so forth. Because you might find that the person with the best sort of technical skills and the best career history has got to where they got completely on their own, right? And then when you drop them into a team, and that's fine if you can replicate that environment for them, maybe it'll work. But if you drop them into a team where all of a sudden they've got like other people dependent on them and things like that, it might not go so well. So just optimize for the group over the individual, really, I think is what I mean by that.
So if you hire someone as an analyst, what all skill set you look for?
Yeah, it depends on the team, I guess. And what basically all hiring for me, and I think for most people, really is more about have you already done, or can you do the things that I need done in the next 18 months, right? And so there's two ways of figuring that out. Are you bright enough to sort of figure that out and take on the training and learn them, or have you actually just done them before? So if you want a job with like Hypercube Consulting as a data analyst, I'm not hiring, but if you did, right, and I was hiring for like a data analyst for my energy customers, the person that's got like a portfolio of dashboards and user stories and things like that around energy trading and like the kinds of projects that I'm doing, they're going to win over the person from like Cambridge, Oxford, Harvard, whatever, that's done general stuff, because I know for a fact you can build these charts because you've built them and I can see them, right? I recommend Alexa Gordick, who is a researcher at DeepMind. He got a role at DeepMind, one of the most coveted and highly thought of AI organizations in the world. Very difficult to get into. He got a job in there without a machine learning qualification. And he wrote a blog about it, how I got my job at DeepMind. And it was brilliant. It was like he knew where he wanted to get to and he worked backwards, much like we talked about earlier. He started a YouTube channel where he did a video on every paper DeepMind ever released, talking about what the paper means, right? So when he gets to think about how that, and he did loads of other stuff, but think about how that goes in the interview. What do you think we do here? Well, there's like 20 hours of me talking about what you do here on my YouTube channel with X thousand views and so on and so forth. That's his portfolio of understanding, right? Lots of effort, but that was a big payoff. Like maybe there's a version of that or a slimmed down version of that you like. Writing a newsletter is really easy. Writing a blog is really easy. Starting a podcast is quite easy, right? Doing these kind of things to show that you love what you're going for and you do understand it, it's going to go a long way, more than good qualifications or like the right kind of project. The right kind of project is great if you say you've done essentially what I need you to do somewhere else. That's also good, but prove it is the kind of flip side of that.
Yeah, so having like a public profile really helps you validate the things you have written in. Like a public profile really helps you validate the things you have written in resume, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's podcast, whether it's YouTube, whether it's blog or newsletter. It helps the interviewer also understand how much capable you are, not just what's written on the resume, but what you have already presented in the world. Resume, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's podcast, whether it's YouTube, whether it's blog or newsletter. It helps the interviewer also understand how much capable you are, not just what's written on the resume, but what you have already presented in the world.
Yep, I've got jobs without an interview, like high level sort of head of level jobs without an interview because of the work that I do online. Anyone, and yeah, if I'm looking at CVs, right, and a CV comes in with a GitHub link at the top, I'll probably spend 5-6 times as long going through their GitHub as I did everyone else. It's more interesting and I get a better feel for who they are and what level they're at.
As a company, how do you feel about hiring the people who are transitioning from different domains?
It's hard because you need to make sure they are at the requisite level of skill that they can contribute, and you don't have to like teach them everything about the technical side of the job. So you do, yeah. You like for most people, if you don't know them, you do need to check that. But as if they can show you portfolios of work and mountains of evidence of that, either through their CV or through like an online portfolio, then I think you're in a good spot to bring them on. Now, if they're transferring from some random domain to yours and they're just learning analytics and data science, then they treat them like a new hire or a grad. They probably have some crossover skills, but you probably need to test those people a bit deeper. But again, look, if they've built the portfolio and they can prove to me that they've done it, I'd go for it.
Yeah. So if someone is trying to transition into, data domain, and if they have relevant skill set, if the team the people they are hiring for is relevant to the background, I guess then that makes sense. And also if they have like a public profile through which they can validate the work they have done and they can show that they have the relevant skill set and everything to be on this job.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's about risk, right? Can I take a significant bet that this person's going to be good at the job? Yes or no? That's it.
Yeah, completely. So, it's been 10 years that you are in this industry. How do you upskill yourself, and how would you recommend people like me who just have been in, 2+ years of working experience? How would you recommend us to, upskill? What all resources to look for, and how we can upskill ourselves into our journey?
Always follow a newsletter. That's a good one. No, joking. Depends. So good mentors and good managers, they'll line those opportunities up for you. They'll help you. People like to help you. As the best learning you'll ever do is on the job building things. So like build stuff and keep trying new things out and test stuff out. The second best is, there's like a 70-20-10 rule, and it's like doing the job is 70% of your learning. 20% is like being shown how to do it, or training. So that's like traditional training courses. They're quite good. And then 10% is like what you read and what you consume and sort of teach yourself. So I would say find opportunities to do the work that's going to progress you up that ladder to where you want to get to. Find good mentors and people that are going to help you get there. And then find resources that you enjoy reading, because you have to do a lot if you want to get in front, I think. So you might as well enjoy doing it.
Yeah, wow, that's totally amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. One last question for this podcast. Is there any book specifically which really highlighted your career, or which really showed the path you wanted to follow, or has been your, one stopper solution?
That's a great question. I'll give it non-technical and a technical one. Best non-technical book, I think, for like my attitude and being a better team member and manager, is a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And he's like a ex-Navy SEAL or something. And I'm not a big fan of war stories, and there's a lot of that in it. But the book's about taking ownership of the things that you interact with. So like, even if it's not quite your fault, just take ownership. And that kind of attitude, when I started to embody that, made everyone start trusting me, made my managers like working with me. Like, that really helped. So that was like an attitude shift for me. And I thought that was really powerful. It's a good book on this kind of stuff. At the moment, everything I'm reading is about sales and how to be a salesperson, because I have to make sales now.
Yeah.
The Challenger Customer. I can't remember this by. There's a series of 2 books: the Challenger Sale and the Challenger Customer. Now I'm going to write a blog post on what I'm reading at the moment, because it's all about stakeholder management in an organization. And a lot of it, I think, sometimes as a data professional, you have to be a salesperson within your own company. You have to sell people and your ideas. Anyway, the Challenger Customer talks about the different kinds of like people that you'll bump into, and you get like, and the way they interact and how you have to get them on board. So it's quite interesting, and I think it's really relevant to actually just the internal sales message as well. So yeah, I'll write a brief sort of summary of my thoughts on that for data people at some point, but it's a good book actually.
Yeah, that's amazing. I recently started reading Influence. That's on a similar ground, like how one can, it's amazing.
Incredible book.
I guess that's about it. Thank you so much for joining the session, and thank you so much for, taking time out. It really means a lot.
No, look, it's been great and like lovely to sort of get to speak to you. Looking forward to sort of listening to the other episodes as well.